Welcome back, listeners. This is the orientation video for Long Walk Talks Lost. I am Chief Engineer David Hensley, owner and creative director of Long Walk Productions, and I'm joined tonight by my head researcher,
Cara Hayes,
and our staff quantum physicist,
Robert Brafford.
And we are continuing our Lost 20-year retrospective now in Season 6, getting right there in the, past the halfway point of Season 6.
Oof.
Yeah. Our almost 2-year endeavor is coming to a close, and it's been a minute since we've been here, guys. Life keeps lifing. But we are on track to, after next week's episodes, which is going to be 13, 14, and 15, our plan is to watch the last 3 episodes, 16, 17, and 18, on the day that Lost finished up 16 years ago, May 23rd. And so you can expect the last episode of we're discussing the show to come out that following week.
Sometime after enough days have passed for us to all stop crying. Basically,
yes. But before we get all that, we still got 3 episodes to discuss, and we also had a themed meal. Robert, a themed meal and a themed drink this time. Robert?
Yeah, I admit this was not one that tied in particularly to the episode, except kind of as a happy coincidence, but it was Cinco de Mayo when we were watching it, so... because this is a lesson I need to relearn periodically, I was like, I'll order food from a Mexican place on Cinco de Mayo, and I'll go pick it up, and then we'll go watch it. And it didn't occur to me that there would be, any kind of delay in executing the steps of that plan.
Well, your first proposal was, hey, let's go out to a restaurant and get Mexican food, and then go watch. And I was like, maybe we should order instead. Yeah. It ended up being delicious, though.
It was hilarious just to watch because you have all these restaurants that are on DoorDash just temporarily closing because they're clearly getting so overwhelmed that they can't do these takeout orders. So, yeah, I ended up standing in the waiting spot of Reyes Teca off Celanese Road for about 40 minutes waiting for the food, which, like you said, was very good when we got it. And don't blame anybody in the restaurant. They were just completely flooded.
No, this was like your Super Bowl party when... Yeah. I thought, it's a Super Bowl Sunday. I'll put the order in for pickup on Friday. Friday afternoon, I submitted the order for 2 pizzas and 2 things of wings for pickup on 5:30 Sunday afternoon, a full 48 hours in advance, thinking it should be ready by then with enough advance notice. No, I think I ended up at your house at 6:45, something like that.
Thereabouts, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But it was also a convenient excuse, talking about Cinco de Mayo and not the Super Bowl, for us to have margaritas.
Yay.
Yes.
Which you can never go wrong with a margarita.
My pregnant wife kindly went and picked that up while I was waiting on the food, and she says she got some very judgmental looks when she went into the into the liquor barn.
Yeah, Yeah, I can imagine she would have.
Look, pregnancy is tough. Got to get through it somehow.
Right?
All right. Well, we are going to be kicking off our discussion tonight with episode 610, The Package.
It's just nice to finally have Jin and Sun back in the spotlight after... we talked about this a little bit, but there's just been kind of a recurring issue, and it's always been sort of a thing with the show, but you really notice it as they come into the home stretch, where some characters just kind of get on the bench for a little while, and they get maybe a line or 2 an episode just, to remind you that they're there and the actor gets their paycheck. But they're not really doing anything. And Jin and Sun have both just been kind of tagging along with the action for so much of this season. It's very nice for them to finally get an episode where, they get to really play off each other again.
I would watch a whole show with just those 2.
We start with we saw them last in the season premiere, I think, where they're at LAX, and Sun claims that she doesn't speak English in this version, which turns out to be true. It sounds like in this universe, based on where things go with the rest of this episode. So with neither of them able to communicate, Jin is not able to explain why he has an envelope with $25,000 in cash. Was it 25?
Yeah.
And
then you have to declare anything over 10.
Yeah, and so in the great American tradition of civil asset forfeiture, because Jin can't prove he doesn't have the money illegally, they just get to keep it.
Yeah, and thinking about it, it does make sense that Sun wouldn't speak English in this version because, as we find out shortly after this, they're not married in this timeline. And if they're not married, then their relationship doesn't get rocky. And if their relationship doesn't get rocky, then she doesn't plan on running away to Los Angeles, which necessitates learning English.
Oh.
Yeah. But yeah, we get a great moment at the when they're checking into their hotel, and Jin demands 2 rooms and then holds up his hand showing that he's not wearing a ring. It's another one of those, hey, there's something off about this timeline kind of things.
You love that they're still able to do that, especially with the stuff that's different from before. That, oh, Jack has a son, or wait, Sawyer's a cop? And just the idea that we're seeing a version of these characters whose lives were very different before Flight 815 as well.
Well, right after this, we get one of many check-ins over the course of these three episodes with John Locke, Fake Locke, Phlox, merry band of survivors hanging out in the woods, which is pretty much all they fucking do for 3 episodes.
They have the excuse of being tranquilized for a decent share of one of those episodes, at least, for why they're not going around and getting more stuff done.
That's fair, but I wish I had written down the actual quote, because the first time we see Sayid in this episode, he's telling somebody that he doesn't feel things anymore, like happiness, sadness, anything like that. And all I could think of was that Sayid, like Dennis Reynolds on a much different show, can't feel feelings anymore. Do you not feel feelings?
Credit Naveen Andrews for sounding kind of like vaguely bummed about it, but of course he's not particularly emotional about not feeling emotions. It's just something he's noticing.
And also, like, I wish I had written down what this specific note was referencing, but God, it's just such a commentary on the writing this season, which, again, loved this show, enjoying this season, but half of it has been spent with one character telling another character what they missed based on, like, what happened in the last few episodes.
I think it's kind of a function of the fact that they're no longer able to be like, well, these characters are dealing with the Dharma Initiative back in the 70s, and these characters are dealing with coming out of the plane crash, and these characters, everybody's sort of in the chess game between Flock and the remaining candidates. So there's not really like another thing for characters to be occupied with that we can check in on. And it is somewhat important to know who knows what, who hasn't been brought into the loop on this or that. So I get the reason for it. I get the function, but yeah, it does kind of, you get a little bit of a treading water feel for some scenes.
Nowadays, you'd call that Netflix writing, because it's come out in over the last year or so that Netflix mandates that all their screenplays and TV shows, somebody reiterates what the plot is every couple of scenes for those second screen watchers out there.
Ugh.
Right?
I hate that so much.
Yeah. We do get a, back in the hotel, so Jin does come over to Sun's hotel room, saying that even though he was held up at the airport and missed his, like they were supposed to get like dinner at a restaurant with one of Mr. Pack's associates, he's still going to go to the restaurant, deliver the watch, do what he was supposed to do. But Sun gets a little bit like, oh, you told me to button my shirt up, which was a callback to what he did, in season 1 on the island. But Jin, even in the alt universe, does not seem to be quite as uptight as season 1 Jin. So he's kind of apologetic about it and just saying he didn't want to draw attention. And then Sun starts unbuttoning her shirt one at a time, saying, do you want me to button that one? Do you want me to button that one? And it's actually a really steamy scene just because, wow, the way these actors look at each other, it's just hardcore bedroom eyes as Yoon Jin Kim just kind of goes down her blouse.
Yeah, the only thing I could think of was that the writers finally remembered, oh yeah, Yoon Jin Kim is hot. Because we've seen so much of Kate over the last 6 seasons that it's easy to forget about that moment in season 1 where Sun finally gets her time to shine in her bikini standing out on the beach.
Oh, I did forget about that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Like when she's finally out from under Jin's thumb, she gets to show off, and she gets to do it again here.
Yes, she does.
Let's see. So Sun is on the beach, back on the island, not particularly happy about the whole we're candidates and we have to make our big stand, because she's still kind of in her mode of just wanting to find Jin and get off the island. And she goes back to her old garden that she, had back in the early seasons, which is a cute little callback to something that was a big deal for her. And Flock, for maybe this is what the second or third time he does this, steps out of the jungle to just have a conversation with somebody who's wandered off on the beach. I actually do kind of like it because it gives you the sense of him as like this circling creature that like the second you're away from everybody else, he'll try to strike and make his move on you. Even if in this case, he's just trying to convince her to come with him. And when she points out that she went to the temple and she saw all the people that he massacred, Flock kind of says, well, those people were confused. They were lied to. And it's like, well, yeah, Flock, their characters on Lost. That's how everybody is.
It's interesting that you point that out, like Locke popping out of the jungle to tempt somebody or threaten them or whatever, because they're literally painting Flock and Jack as the devil and the angel as over on people's shoulders. I like that. But
I mean,
yeah.
I was literally like, and even back in the day, I always saw Jacob and the Man in Black as God and the devil, or some form of good and evil, which.
Yeah. Well, when you name one of them Jacob, that's kind of evocative.
And the other one is played by an actor who got a scene in the first season holding up the backgammon pieces, black and white, 2 players, 2 sides, one light, the other dark. So yeah, they've always been laying that one down.
At least I wasn't far off.
So yeah, Sun. I'm trying to remember exactly what causes her to run away from the Man in Black, but she ends up like smacking her head into a tree.
It's a little bit Looney Tunes, not gonna lie. But on the Flash Sideways subplot, we see who Jin was supposed to have delivered that watch to, and I wonder if this is just some fun they're having, or if like maybe in the original timeline it would have been the same person. But in this timeline, it's Martin Keamy. Kevin Durant is back again. We saw him a few episodes in Sayid's episode. A few episodes ago in Sayid's episode, and now he gets to show up and be psychotic again, except a little more subdued than he was when he was shooting teenage girls in the jungle.
And with very much more of an accent. Like, he really laid it on thick.
Yeah, he's hamming it up. He's having the time of his life.
He's having a great time playing the crazy person trying to speak like a normal human being thing, but he's bugging his eyes out a little too much and his smile's just a little too wide. Yeah, and it's even though this is a scene with him and his associate, I think Omar was the other guy. They confront Jen and Sun, and he wants to know, because he's the guy that they were supposed to bring the money to. He wants to know where it is. But neither of them can speak English, so eventually they decide to go get. We'll talk about that later. But it is interesting that like this version of Jen and Sun are much more passive than the versions of them that we had. That that Sun being the person who secretly learned English without her husband or father knowing, and eventually used her money to like buy out her father and take over his businesses, and Jen being an experienced enforcer for a crime lord. They spend most of this episode just kind of getting like steered from place to place. It's kind of an interesting, maybe meta comment on how much these two characters are kind of steered by circumstances over the run of the show. And just that, even now when they're in the Flash Sideways, characters like, all right, you have to come over here with me, and you're going to stay there with him. And that just things pull them apart no matter what their choices are.
But it does make me wonder, though. So, it seemed, well, no, I guess that would work. Never mind. It just, words are hard. I was trying to think of, how far back would the reset or whatever it was with these Flash Sideways, how far would it go back? Because, of course, they were married before they went to Australia, but then, But it also works because Jack has a son, and that would have been a good 13 years prior. So, yeah, I had to work that out in my head out loud.
There are certain aspects of the Flash Sideways universe that it's better not to question too far, because Jack is supposed to be, if I remember correctly from what I read on Lostpedia, that time I went down the rabbit hole of how old are these people supposed to be. Jack is supposed to be like 34 or 35 and now has a teenage son, which would imply that Flash Sideways Jack had a kid fairly early into his 20s. So,
like before he was even in medical school.
Right. But, I mean, that ties into what I wrote down next, because it was around this time I realized are these two camps, Phlox and the Ajira survivors, within walking distance of each other?
I thought they were on two different islands.
Well,
So the Hydra is where Widmore's set up. That one, and then Flock and the Lost Boys on the beach are on the main island.
yeah, but Flock, before he leaves, tells Sayid that he's going to go see them, and well, he just says that he's going somewhere, and he fucks off, finds Sun at her garden. He chases her, she hits her head, and then a few hours later, he's walking back into his camp. And yeah, you can kind of explain that away, like, oh, he turned into smoke and flew over there. But it's another one of those really frustrating inconsistencies. We joked a lot earlier about like the island expanding and contracting. You know, it took Sayid 3 days to find the cable running out of the water into the forest, and it took Hurley an afternoon. In a few episodes, we're going to see that it takes a couple of hours for when Hurley decides to lead them to Flock's camp. Like, it takes them into the night to get there. Flock just sort of does it willy-nilly. This isn't the first time he's gone from his camp over to theirs and back in a short amount of time.
We have seen him literally teleport away when people's backs are turned. So I admit him I give a pass to because smoke monster, but you're not wrong that the island has a certain like inconsistent spatial quality. And I mean, it was in season 4 when Faraday was like conducting his experiments and determining that like if you shoot a drone or a missile at the island, it takes like 45 minutes longer to land than it should have for traveling and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm willing to allow that in the sense of like this is a magic place where the rules don't apply normally, and the fact that that's convenient for the writers as well. I guess that's something a gift they gave themselves.
Pretty much, yeah. And shortly after this, we get another old location pop up, and we gave it a nickname that I love so much, Robert.
Jen wakes up in ye old re-education room. I think we last saw this place with Carl strapped in, getting like brainwashed out of wanting to have sex with Alex. And I think Jen accidentally flips on the screen at one point. I don't know if subliminal conditioning works if you don't speak the language that the words are flashing in, but yeah, it just turns out to be where they dumped him until he woke up and Widmore's people could talk to him.
And so when Widmore's people come to talk to him, we see again the worst group of adversaries, mercenaries, whatever you want to call them. The Best Buy Geek Squad, led by Dollar Store Tina Fey, who just kind of sucks. I don't know if it's the writing or the attitude that this actress brought to the role, but every time she shows up and starts talking, I'm like, we had a mass murdering psycho leading this up last time in the form of the aforementioned Martin Keamy. We've had so many interesting characters show up on this show, and then you get these fucking guys. These aren't even C-listers. They're college interns that Widmore recruited and handed guns to.
It feels to me like they knew when they introduced these characters they were not going to have time to do anything with them, so they just kind of were like, everything feels like it's telling you, don't worry about her. Like, Zoe does not have some complex, tragic backstory. She's not going to have some rich emotional arc. Just don't worry about it. She's there as someone that can like bounce exposition off people. We do. Let's see. Back at the camp, so we get one of several scenes that we saw in this batch of episodes where somebody comes back to camp and Sawyer comes stomping up to them, wanting to know what's going on. And in this case, when Flock comes back, he tells Sayid that the two of them are going over on the outrigger to the other island. And when Sawyer asks, well, can't you just turn into smoke and fly over the water? Locke goes, well, if I could do that, do you think I'd still be on this island? And Sawyer just deadpans, no, because that'd be ridiculous. It's just line of the episode, even if Josh Holloway doesn't get a lot to do. That's one of my favorite line readings he gets over the run of the show.
Yeah, we'll talk about it more in the upcoming 2 episodes, but the little amount that we get of Josh Holloway is criminal in this batch of episodes. But anyway, in the Flash Sideways, Keamy and Omar have to go and get an interpreter, and it is none other than fan favorite One-Eyed Mikhail.
Well, not one-eyed yet in
not
this
yet.
version of reality.
He will be shortly. Poor guy. Well, poor guy. Whatever.
He won't have to live with it very long.
Heyo, that's true. Yes, it's great to see all of these actors back in varying capacities. I love it.
Yeah, back on the island, we find out that when Sun hit her head on the branch, she wakes up and she can understand English when other people are speaking, but she seems to only be able to verbalize in Korean, which feels very much like a mid-season 3 plot we would have gotten when the writers were kind of like spinning their wheels on this stuff.
Well, but it was something that I thought about when you'd brought it up. It's interesting that in current timeline, she hits her head, she can't speak any English, but then in the Flash Sideways, she doesn't speak any English. So like it's, I find that an interest. I don't know if it's on purpose, but it's just interesting.
It definitely feels like a deliberate parallel. Also, Jin hits his head getting dragged into the freezer, so we see he's got the head wound by the end of the Flash Sideways plot.
And also a traumatic thing taking away somebody's ability to speak was already done in the beginning of season 3 after Locke survived the hatch implosion.
Oh, yeah.
And had to go on a spirit quest. Yeah. Yeah, we're just borrowing things wholesale from earlier seasons.
I'm trying to remember if that really even goes anywhere. It does have a nice moment at the end where Jack gives her like a pad so she can write stuff and they can communicate a little bit back and forth, but yeah, I'm trying to remember if this actually pays off at the rest of the show or if it's just, like you said, something that kind of ties into her Flash Sideways experience.
If I'm remembering things correctly, I don't think there's enough time left for it to.
Yeah. Back on the other side, back on Hydra Island, we get the bald-on-bald confrontation that we've been waiting for as John Locke, or the man looking like John Locke.
The man wearing John Locke.
Yeah, not wrong. Speaks to Charles Widmore through the sonic fence that they've thrown up. Side note, I really thought it would have been hilarious if he had just like grabbed a stick and like pushed over one of the sonic pylons or something. Just in the same way that Bram tried to protect himself from the smoke monster by pouring ash on the ground around him and the monster just threw a rock through it. It's like, yeah, if Locke just like just pushed over part of the fence, it was like, there. Is that so hard? But no, he and Widmore get like a dramatic stare down. We do find out that Widmore never knew really what the monster was when he was on the island either. He just mentions that he knows John Locke is dead and that anything else he knows is just kind of legend, rumor, and noises in the jungle. So interesting that Widmore didn't know that much more than Ben when he was leader of the others.
Although that's going to get contradicted in 2 episodes. Yeah. And spoiler alert for the next episode, he gives Desmond this whole speech about how if the man in black escapes, he'll kill everything and everybody that they've ever loved.
I'm going to assume that's information. He's gotten kind of like the idea of like, whatever this is, you can't let it escape. But in terms of like what it is and the why, maybe that's just information he doesn't have. I always try to make the show fit in. I don't know why that is. That's just how I process things. I can't just be like, it's a plot hole, whatever.
I appreciate that about you, though.
There's something that I didn't catch on the first viewing, but he tells they kind of end their conversation with Flock saying to Widmore, "A wise man once said war is coming to the island, and I think it just got here," which is something that Widmore said to John Locke when he was off the island after he got zapped over to Tunisia, and Widmore sent him to try to connect with the other 815 survivors. So it's him just sort of throwing that he's got John Locke's memories in Widmore's face. And the next note is something that I already mentioned that Sun tells Kimi, who really still wants his money, that if they let her go to a bank with Mikhail, she can get the same money from her account and just give it to him that way. And Kimi sends Mikhail off with her to do that, and then he and Omar take Jen over to the restaurant. So, yeah, they're just being taken in different directions. Back on the island, we see Widmore talks to Jen, and we hear him give an instruction to say the package. He says, take it from the sub and put it in the infirmary. And normally I would think that's just like writerly misdirection, like, ooh, they don't want us to know that the package is a person, or even if it's a he or a she. But I honestly think Widmore would just call Desmond it because he just has no regard for this guy. Spoiler, we eventually find out. Hey, it is raining.
Yeah, enjoy that ASMR, listener. Sorry. Metal roof.
We also get a really sweet moment where he shows Jen a camera that I think they recovered from Sun's luggage around the Ajira flight. And so he gets to flip through the camera and see pictures of the daughter that he has never seen before, which is I called it the interstellar moment. Just he gets to watch her grow up in like a few flicks of the photos, and beautiful moment from Daniel Day Kim, just selling everything he feels in that time.
Well, thanks to the Flash Sideways structure of this season, we know how all of this is going to work out for Kimi and Omar in the Flash Sideways, because they go and they grab Sayid and bring him back there after threatening Sayid's brother. So Sayid fucking shoots and kills them, and then goes and finds Jin. And shortly after that, what's his name? Yeah, Mikhail.
Mikhail comes back as Sun's accounts were closed by her father.
Yes, we find that out. So Mikhail comes back, Mikhail, whatever, potato, tomato, brings Sun back to the restaurant, finds dead bodies on the floor, well, an almost dead Kimi, and in a nice bit of Taken with Liam Neeson misdirection, Jin is lying on the floor with a gun, which he raises and shoots Mikhail in the eye, the same one that he had previously lost. Another one of those. We've talked about all the differences in the Flash Sideways, but there are a few similarities as well popping up. So R.I.P. to Mikhail's right eye.
But there is enough of a struggle for the gun that it goes off, the bullet ricochets, and Sun winds up with a bullet in the abdomen, which is not great under normal circumstances, but especially not as she picks the most dramatic time to declare, as Jen's picking her up and carrying her out of the room. She is pregnant in the Flash Sideways. Yikes. Back on the island, so yeah, Jack gives her a notepad so they can communicate a little more back and forth that way. And there's quite a sweet scene where she just talks about not feeling like she can trust anyone, and Jack asks, "Do you trust me?" And she writes, "Yes," which, he then lets this kind of carry him probably a little out over his skis, because he promises her he's going to help her find Jin and get both of them off the island, which, don't overpromise things, Jack.
Womp.
We also find out that Locke was using his kind of confrontation with Widmore to sort of draw attention away from the other side of the island, where Sayid pulls an Apocalypse Now, comes up out of the water near the pier that the submarine's docked at, just in time to see Desmond getting dragged off the boat. He is back, and he is drugged out of his gourd by Widmore's guys, and so he like falls down as they're trying to drag him off, and his face goes over the edge of the pier like an inch from Sayid's, and then the people dragging him, I guess, just don't notice when they pick Desmond back up. But yeah, Desmond Hume, after he has not appeared so far he appeared in the premiere. He was on the plane with Jack, but otherwise has not appeared at all
in
for the
9
last 10
episodes.
episodes.
Yeah. And it was around that time that I realized, wait a minute, it has only been like a week, maybe less, since Ben shot him on his boat in Los Angeles. Because with everything that happened in the back half of season 5 and up to now, it's easy to forget that the same day that Ben shot Desmond, he went and got on a plane with the other Ajira survivors. The plane went through whatever you want to call it, broke up, crash landed, took half of them to Hydra Island, the other half to 1977. Jack, Hurley, and Kate were only there for, I think, 3 days max. I remember us making a lot of jokes like, wow, it did not take long at all for Jack and Kate to fuck shit up for Sawyer and Juliet. I think it's literally only 2 days that they're in 1977. Then we have the incident. The majority, the like last 2 or 3 episodes of season 5 and the beginning of season 6 take place over like the same 6 to 8 hours. And now they've been in their different camps for 2 or 3 days. So it's been less than a week. And of course, we find that out because Desmond is still suffering from that gunshot wound at the beginning of the next episode, which is 611 Happily Ever After. And in the grand tradition of the show, it opens with an I watch, this time Desmond.
I'm going to say, for an episode that is all about the characters starting to question the reality of the Flash Sideways, the title is definitely one of several giant winks to the audience about what may be happening and where things are going. So Desmond wakes up in the infirmary with, I think he tries to get up, gets held back down, and Widmore comes in to talk to him. And Widmore explains that he had Desmond abducted from the hospital where he was recovering, taken away from his wife and son, drugged, stuffed into a submarine, locked into a room, taken back to the island, drugged again, brought off the submarine, and now he's in an infirmary in the place where he was stuck and isolated for 3 years. And it is to Desmond's credit, or possibly to the credit of the drugs that he's recovering from, that he makes it about 2/3 the way through that before grabbing an IV stand and trying to beat Widmore to death with it. Like, as soon as it seems like he's got the physical ability to do so, he's just like, I am going to kill you. Which, hard to blame him for that.
Oh, very much so. And it's right after this that Widmore says that he'd rather show, he says, it'll be easier for me to show you than tell you what Desmond is there for. And it's just one of those TV things that's like, wow, you couldn't even at least try to explain it to him first. Like, I get show don't tell is a screenwriting technique, but I always hate it when it's like, no, I can't tell you. Let me just show you. Well, maybe you could tell me on the way to what you're going to show me. Like, maybe give me some pretext here.
Maybe Widmore had initially planned to say, I'm going to lock you in a room and just pump you full of electromagnetic radiation to see if it kills you or not. But again, Desmond is still in arm's reach of that IV stand, so it's like, don't press your luck.
Yeah, and we talked about it a little bit when we were discussing the last episode. At what point did Widmore learn about Smokey? Was it because he was kicked off the island in 1994? No, that's not right. He was kicked off the island in 1988.
So it was around the time. So it was when Alex was about 4 years
that's
old,
right.
right?
Yeah, that's right. We did the math on this. It was 1994.
Yeah. So presumably, the others would have encountered the smoke monster at some point. So even if he doesn't really know what it is, he knows that it's there. I mean, especially because they established that, like, the smoke monster's whole thing is to try to kind of corrupt the people that Jacob brings to the island. So if he didn't take a stab at Widmore at some point, I'd be surprised.
It's just still weird that, like, all of a sudden Widmore is on board with this plan of we have to stop him from leaving the island, which something that we haven't heard until this season. But anyway, I love it whenever one of us drops a banger of a quote, and I always try to make sure I put it in the notes. Robert, while talking about, so in the flash sideways, Desmond encounters Claire and helps her get her luggage off the wheel thing at the airport, the baggage claim. And as they are walking away from each other, Robert said, wow, if she wasn't pregnant before, that conversation would do it.
Well, I remember back in, I think it was season 4, when we got Sayid's flash forwards to when he's like a debonair man of mystery, taking ladies to the opera and just, doing all this James Bond stuff. We kind of talked about just how good Naveen Andrews looks in, like, nicer outfits, just doing the smoother life. And it's the same thing with Desmond, because the sideways Desmond is like a corporate fixer for Charles Widmore, who, like, jets around and wears nice suits. And Henry Ian Cusick just looks really good in that and just carries that kind of, like, breezy confidence really well. So it's just, fun use of the actor's very natural charm, which, given how he spends most of the show just very much on edge in very tense situations, seeing him relax and open up, it's like, yeah, wow, this guy, lucky he didn't meet Penny yet, because otherwise his entire flash sideways would have just been, yep, the two of them in an apartment 24/7.
Bonin.
Yep.
Watching Widmore be friendly instead of antagonistic to Desmond in this episode is unsettling as hell. Even discounting the fact that, like, Desmond attacked him a few minutes earlier, Widmore being nice to anyone, I guess, is unsettling after everything we've learned about the man.
Yeah, that he has him in the office, pours him a glass of the McCutcheon whiskey. And the latest job that he sends Desmond out on is that he has to go take care of a rock star who has been brought in to play alongside Widmore's son at is it a birthday event?
No, it's a charity event.
Yeah.
Charity event. Yeah, his son is a classical pianist, but he wants to play alongside a rock star. And that rock star is none other than good old Charlie Pace. But he, as we saw in the premiere, tried to swallow his bag of heroin and nearly died on the plane and has just been bailed out. So Desmond goes to pick him up, and yeah, we get to see Dominic Monaghan back again, which is just always delightful. And it's given that Desmond was the last character to see Charlie alive on the island, it's interesting that he well, I was going to say, except he encountered Jack on the plane and all that, so I wouldn't say he's the first person that Charlie runs into in the Flash Sideways, but pretty close.
Yeah, and as Charlie explains to Desmond in the bar that they have a drink at, Charlie, during his near-death experience of almost choking to death on the baggie of heroin in the premiere of this season, the near-death experience gave him a vision of an alternate life where he was on an island on the beach with a beautiful blonde woman, and it's the first glimpse that we get of what the true nature of the Flash Sideways really is. And it's one of those things that we talk about a lot, like with Walkabout. Once you know the twist, you're like, oh yeah, we can see this coming a mile away. But at the first time, you're like, holy shit, that's mind-blowing. Hindsight being 2020, with the benefit of knowing how this show ends, watching them put down these breadcrumbs is really great, seeing how it all comes together. I remember watching it live and being so frustrated, like, what the fuck is happening? What is this universe? And discussing it week to week. So now I'm just really enjoying seeing how they set this up.
I will say, credit the writers, because this must have taken some real guts to go 11 episodes into the season before you really start to tease at there being something off about the Flash Sideways beyond just, well, things are different now, but like specifically the characters within it start to have... we didn't really mention it, but the whole framing device for this episode is that Widmore does stick Desmond in a room, blast him with electromagnetic energy. Desmond closes his eyes and then wakes up in the Flash Sideways. And so unlike everybody else who just seems to be having like the traditional Lost style, you know, we're seeing this and we're seeing that, there's not necessarily a direct connection for the characters themselves. It does seem like Desmond has actually been thrown into this, though at first he doesn't remember anything on the island. But it's also interesting that sort of the two people who are kind of pushing him, you've got Widmore, who's like the, you know, here's everything you want, here's my respect, here's a job, here's something for you to focus on and to stay in this reality. The other Charles, or Charlie of the show, is the one who's telling him none of this matters, you've got to find something bigger and let that pull you in a different direction. That those are sort of the two figures that kind of start off pushing Desmond either to stay or to move away from the life he has here.
But it doesn't matter which universe we're in, because in either one, Charlie Pace shouldn't be allowed near water. To try to convince Desmond of what he has seen, he causes Desmond to crash his car into a marina, forcing Desmond to have to fight his way out and swim around and then try to free Charlie. And we get that beautiful callback where Flash Sideways Charlie holds up his hand to the window, and Desmond looks at it and then gets the briefest flashback, I guess. It's hard to say in this
Flash
scenario.
around.
Yeah.
Flash adjacent of watching Charlie put his hand up with Not Penny's boat written on it, which to Flash Sideways Desmond means nothing. But it's jarring for him, to say the least.
And that also starts to kind of push him to wondering, wait, who is Penny? Not Penny's boat. What's that referring to? Mm-hmm. Continuing the theme that we had through, I think Flashes Before His Eyes was the first Desmond episode where he flashed back to the day when he almost proposed to Penny, and then we had The Constant. And just a running thing with Desmond is that he's the guy who's aware that something is happening. It's a very meta thing, but like he starts to experience things that he's the first of the Flash Sideways characters to really have this connection to what we've seen on the island before, which is always a fun thing with Desmond because it lets the writers kind of dig into, okay, how much do these things shape us and how much would they affect us if we found ourselves in a different place where the old rules might not have applied.
Yeah, and you know what, guys? Desmond has been through a lot over the course of this show. He was marooned on the island for 3 years. There was a period of time where he could not get even 2 full hours of sleep at a time. He was shooting himself up with unknown drugs. He was caught in an implosion. He started traveling back and forth in time, and he's been beaten up, he's been shot, and all of his collective injuries and experiences over the course of the episode and the show as a whole have all built up to adding a sepia filter to his flashbacks, which was the weirdest and most egregious thing that I was like, really, we're doing this again? I've complained about the color grading in various flashbacks, but I was like, come on, guys. And then we get this brilliant moment.
So yeah, Desmond and Charlie, they get out of the water, they get taken to a hospital. Desmond gets put in an MRI machine, but kind of freaks out a little when it starts going. Goes to, because I think that's where he first sees the visions of Penny directly. So he goes to find Charlie and runs into Jack and is like, oh, hey, you and I were on the same plane together. There's a third guy who was also on that plane. You saved his life then, and he's in your hospital now for a totally different thing. And Jack, understandably, is still taking a second to process like the first part of that. When David, you talked about the breadcrumbs and the foreshadowing. The foreshadowing now reaches the point where Charlie comes running out of his room, dashing down the hallway, shouting, "None of this is real. None of this is real."
And remember what I said about don't think too hard about what's going on in the Flash Sideways? Desmond gets off of alternate Sideways Flight 815, talks to Claire at the baggage carousel, immediately goes to Widmore's office, talks to him. Widmore sends him to go get Charlie out of prison. He does. He goes and talks to Charlie at the bar. They crash. They go to the hospital, and Desmond talks to Jack, like Robert just said, at the hospital, which implies this has only been a few hours. This implies that Jack got off a plane from Sydney to Los Angeles and then immediately went to work.
Oh.
I think, well, part of me again just wants to say the logistics of the Flash Sideways ultimately don't really need to make sense, but it is possible that there was time between when Desmond landed and when he checked in with Widmore, because we know he gets picked up by the limo. We didn't even mention his limo driver is Minkowski, the doomed radio man from the freighter, who also had a electromagnetic experience. Although in the Flash Sideways, he really just seems like he wants to, get Desmond up with some hookers. It's like the second thing. He's like, hey, I know Los Angeles. I know some good restaurants. And, hey, you want a prostitute? It's basically that direct. But he talks about taking him to the hotel, I think. So it's maybe like Desmond got checked in and a little time has passed. Because we know Charlie was still in the, being arrested when during Sawyer's Flash Sideways earlier, because his brother showed up to try and bail him out. So, although I guess his brother was looking for him, we don't know that Charlie was still there when that happened.
That's a good point as well.
So Desmond eventually, when he just kind of recognizes that whatever else is going on with Charlie, he is not going to be going to a concert and playing any music. Widmore is pissed off about it, but tells Desmond, well, fine, you can be the one to break this news to my wife. So Desmond crosses paths with Sideways Eloise, who at first seems very friendly and polite, and actually takes the news that Charlie's not going to make it in stride, even saying, well, what happened, which is just a callback to all the time shenanigans. But then Desmond hears somebody talking about the seating arrangement, catches the name Penny, and then asks if he can see a copy of the guest list, which causes Eloise to get a lot less friendly very quickly, because in any reality, Eloise Hawking believes that the universe will break if Desmond gets laid.
Well, at the end of the episode, we finally get to see Desmond and alternate Penny meet, and it is at the same stadium where Jack and Desmond met so many years before, at least...
In a different timeline.
Yeah, in a completely different timeline. It's another one of those, hey, things are slightly different this time. And when they shake hands, Desmond gets a flash, similar to what Charlie did, of the alternate timeline, our main timeline, where he and Penny were together. And I couldn't help but note that Sideways Desmond is in shockingly good condition for having just fainted on a bunch of concrete bleachers.
Penny has excellent catching reflexes.
She must have, because his head should have bounced off of something. But he makes it, and we get out of the Flash Sideways, which took the majority of the episode. Nobody else really shows up during this time. It is all like Widmore and do we even get Dollar Store Tina Fey?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they drag him in and they set up the experiment, and one of the Widmore's nerd squad gets fried when they go into the electromagnetic room while they are trying to fix the electromagnetic room, and they get electromagnetized.
I thought it was
shockingly.
an electromagnetic hut. Looked like a hut to me, didn't
It
it?
basically is, because there's that great moment I pointed out while we were watching it. They lock him in there, and it takes up like the middle 2/3 of the room. But after they lock him in and turn it on, Desmond just stands there right in the middle of the room freaking out about it instead of, I don't know, going to one side or the other.
Maybe he doesn't notice the big coily metal thing.
Maybe he doesn't.
I feel like he's trying to kick the door open when it starts up, and then he stands in the middle. But
Listeners, we're going to take a brief pause until this has gone from ASMR to just torture. So we'll be back to discuss the next episode. Well, all right, listeners. I hope you enjoyed that little bit of really loud. We're going to keep calling it ASMR because why not? That happened at the end of episode 611 right there. But, hey, you know what? We're in a metal building. Shit happens. We're going to move on to episode 612. Everybody loves Hugo.
don't they just?
Yep, it is an inverse from a season 2 episode. Everybody hates Hugo, and the first thing we see is a dedication ceremony in Hurley's honor, because we find out that Hurley, who once had a prehistoric bird fly overhead screeching his name, is opening a paleontology division at a local college.
I love that you will never let go of that random thing that the writers clearly just put in and never had an intention of going back to.
And I'd totally forgotten about that.
Hashtag Hurleybird is going to be my next tattoo, you guys.
Ooh, I might skip that one.
Nope, you're in this with me too, bitch.
Oh, God.
And we had a whole video about just his life of, philanthropy and just doing good works, narrated by none other than what is it? Pierre Chang?
I think Pierre Chang is
Yeah.
his actual name, also known as Martin Candle, also known as Edgar Halifax, and
Mark Wickman? I
Mark
think his name?
Wickman. Yes, that's right, because there's so many candle-related jokes. We got Wax, we got Wicks, and then we got Chang somewhere in there.
Yeah. So I didn't really make a note on this, but speaking of like things that are interesting to think back on in view of knowing where the season is ultimately going, Hurley being a guy who's lived a long life full of just doing good things that made everybody else happy, but is now kind of lonely and, feeling that maybe he's ready for a human connection again, is an interesting thing to explore. Kind of the running thing of this episode is his mom telling him that he needs to get out there and find a girlfriend. And just saying, one day you'll find a girl who will love you. And then we cut to Hurley on the island visiting Libby's grave, which, ow.
Yeah, that one hurt. That stung.
And as if we're not already just hurting enough from that, as Hurley talks to the grave, he reveals that despite being visited by many different ghosts of people who died on the island, Libby has never come to see him. So talking to her grave really is just all he can do to communicate with her.
But who comes to visit him next?
Speaking of the dead, it's Harold Perrineau as Michael Dawson, showing up to tell Hurley that they need to not do what Alana and Richard are telling them to do, which I forget if they outlined the plan this episode, but they're deciding they're going to go blow up the Ajira plane to prevent the Man in Black from leaving the island. And Michael is telling Hurley that doing that is going to just get everybody killed.
Yeah, and Jack happens to wander up while Hurley and Michael are talking, and Jack asks Hurley, "Who are you talking to?" And Hurley lies and says, "No one." But all I could think was, Jack, Hurley can talk to the dead, and he's also a bad liar. Jack immediately drops this, but you didn't want to push that just a little bit harder?
I will say they do. This might be kind of building up to the conversation they have at the end of the episode where Jack says that he's just willing to trust Hurley and step back. So it could be he knows that Hurley's lying, but is like, all right, he'll tell me when he's ready. But admittedly, yeah, if I knew a guy could talk to the dead people, anytime I came upon him and he was having a conversation to thin air, I'd be like, who was that? Can you just say? I'm really curious now. Yeah, in this version of the Flash Sideways, Hurley was never in the mental institution. We find out because he actually that happens a little bit later, but yeah, he has just had his whole happy and successful life and never. Oh, good Lord, what was it? There was a debt collapse, I think was the reason he was in the mental institution.
Yes, because if I wasn't so fat, I wouldn't have killed all those people.
The writers get to right a few wrongs of their own in the Flash Sideways universe by erasing that part.
Did we add that into the best/worst lines? Because if we didn't, we should go back and do that.
I prefer not to think about it.
Oh,
That's yeah.
all right. Well, do you guys remember in the other 5 seasons of this show when it was always a big deal for everyone to gear up and go out to the Black Rock and get back from it?
When it took like 9 days to get there.
Yeah, when the entirety of the end of season 1 was like, hey, we're all going to get together as a group and trek out into the jungle to go to the Black Rock and get this dynamite and come back safely. And, oh yeah, ours blew up doing it. Now Alana is just like, hey guys, I'm going to go to the Black Rock and get some more dynamite so we can blow up to this plane. Go blow up this plane. Deuces. And then she's like right back with a bag full of dynamite. My next note was along similar lines. We've just kind of given up on the idea of how dangerous it is to handle unstable dynamite. My next note is, welp. Never mind, because when Hurley starts questioning Alana's plan, her and Richard's plan, she gets upset and tells him this is what they're doing, and she takes that bag and throws it down on the ground at her feet, and it explodes. Goodbye, Alana. I'm sure you were supposed to have been an important character.
And I just noted it would have been hilarious if Hurley had just immediately continued his conversation with her ghost. That just... Like, and he just is everyone else sees him talking to thin air, but he's like, she's swearing a lot, guys. I think I'm gonna give her a minute.
Alana's ghost standing in the exact same spot where she blew up, just looking around her feet in disbelief. Guys, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's a great like out of nowhere moment, but yeah, like you said, David, it's very clear that they had bigger plans for this character. I think the writers had said the initial concept was the idea that Jacob had at some point fathered a daughter off the island, and that was going to be Alana. They just did not have time to do that, so they decided to kill her off abruptly. And it's something that I'd have a little more sympathy for if it's just not what feels like another example of a character who had a chance to be defined as something other than a love interest, and them just sort of losing interest in not doing that. Like I like the show and it has some wonderful characters, and I think when they're on, like characters like Sun, Juliet, Claire, I think you've got a lot of great moments, but yeah, you hate to see this character just kind of shuffled off because she had a fun Sarah Connor energy for the time she was on.
Yeah. Oh man. But it wouldn't be lost if we didn't get another butt holster check-in. This time, Flock once again returns to the camp, and Sawyer once again gets up to ask him where he's been, because that's all Josh Holloway has gotten to do for this episode and for episode 10. They've just, this whole, and I'm realizing now that this has all been one very long night. You know, since Desmond's episode was just one extended flashback, Flock went over to Hydra Island, came back, whatever. Still, when we do finally see Josh Holloway again, he's got that pistol tucked behind his back, right down his butt crack.
And back on the beach, Richard is just kind of moving ahead with the plan still, just saying we'll get more dynamite and proceed with the blow up the plane plan. And when the others start to express doubt, Richard says, you know, Alana, like, if we don't do this, Alana will have died for nothing. Her death has to mean something. And Jack gets a wonderful line in saying, maybe she died to show us to stay the hell away from dynamite. Which, again, this is our kind of newer, cooler Jack that we get this season.
Yeah, laying down the truths. It's interesting that so far, in the Flash Sideways universe, all the big revelations have happened because of a man and his love for a woman.
We didn't even mention in the last episode, but yeah, Daniel Faraday shows up again, Sideways Faraday, telling Desmond that he had a revelation when he saw a red-haired woman, who we know is Charlotte, at the museum.
Eating a chocolate bar, even though Mommy said not to eat chocolate before dinner.
Well, she's a grown-up who had just banged Josh Holloway, and she can do whatever she wants.
Oh, damn, that's true. Oh, fuck, I forgot all about that. It's been so long between episodes. I wonder if Faraday in this universe witnessed her leaving Sawyer's place, like after their little tryst.
She's still mad at Sawyer, so she's like, I'm going to rebound with the exact opposite of that guy.
Find me a fucking nerd. It was Faraday's luckiest day on Earth in an alternate universe. Right after I made this note, though, about every male in the Sideways universe having a revelation because of a woman, I realized, well, no, it's laid out for us that no, Libby is the one who had a revelation in the Sideways universe because of a man. Hurley gets to encounter her again in the Sideways universe, going on what is supposed to be a blind date where he gets stood up. And then Libby comes up and addresses him by name and starts talking to him.
And he thinks, oh, you must be the person I'm here to meet. But she seems a little confused by this. And we get another fun returning guest star, Bruce Davison, as the doctor at Hurley's mental institution, who's there because Libby is on an excursion from said mental institution.
Yes, for some reason the doctor took all of the patients out to Mexican that day.
Like you do.
Cinco de
did.
Mayo for them too, maybe.
Oh, maybe. Oh, yeah. Shit.
Meta.
But yeah, so no, she gets kind of, taken away and put back on the bus, even though we find out later she's there voluntarily. She checked herself in. But anyway, we get another meet cute between Hurley and Libby. Hopefully this one will end less disastrously. And then in the island timeline, the group is trekking back to the Black Rock. Again, just like, fuck it. It used to take us a while to get there and be an endeavor. Now we just did there.
No one's ever going to have to make that hour-long or day-long or midway-long trip again because
as they're approaching, Hurley comes running out of it screaming, "Everybody run!" And then the Black Rock explodes. After being a focal point and a destination for this show for 6 seasons, well, as I put it, a fun side quest for 6 seasons, it is now gone. And it's kind of setting the stage, kind of like, when TV shows want to like clear the table, start shooing out guest stars, start shooing out old sets. We've now lost a classic one from season 1.
Nothing is safe.
And it's also around this time in the episode that I realized, because Hurley and Miles are having a conversation. Oh, right, Miles is still there. In episode 10, we saw him playing cards. Well, I think it actually might have been the beginning of this episode. We saw him playing cards with Lapidus on the beach. But he's been a pretty prominent character for the last 2 seasons. He's had flashbacks. He's important in Sawyer's Flash Sideways. But otherwise...
He got to dig up Nikki and Paolo.
He did get to do that, which was Cara's dream.
Oh,
dig
God.
them up and rob them and then bury them again. But he's just sort of become a side character. And that is unfortunately true of pretty much everybody, I guess. Like, Sawyer and Kate and Claire and Sayid have just sort of become side characters at this point. It's a little disappointing for the final season of the show.
I did wonder about this. This is just a note I put in kind of amusing way. Hurley decides he wants to see more of Libby, so he goes to the institution. I can just say hospital. We all know what I'm talking about. He goes to the hospital and makes a $100,000 donation so the doctor will let him just meet up with Libby in their, I guess, like a visitor's area or something. And I was reminded that this was coming out around the time that you had like Garden State and that kind of whole slew of romantic comedies where you've got kind of like a sad sack guy and he meets a girl and she's played by like a gorgeous Hollywood actress, but she's capital letters quirky. She like listens to music and she has funerals for her hamsters and
She's usually got blue hair.
Yeah. And Nathan Rabin, who's a film writer, coined the term manic pixie dream girl to describe that phenomenon. And I just was like, are the Lost writers kind of jabbing at that a little bit by having Hurley meet cute with a woman literally in a mental hospital? Just being like, there's something about her.
Well, we've got one of our own in the form of Cara Hayes. That's why I made that joke, because she's sitting here with her blue hair wearing her Lost Boys t-shirt.
Yes.
So here's another one of those things that, you don't really think about too much. Again, like I said with Jack, in the Flash Sideways universe, you'd have had to have a child relatively young for him to be a teenager. We discovered a while back when we were talking about the ages of these characters that Kate is supposed to be like in her late 20s, Sawyer is 36, Jack's in his early to mid 30s. Hurley was only 21. Now, Jorge Garcia was 31 when he started filming the show, and he looks his age. Cynthia Watros was also in her late 30s, early 40s, so you don't really question it too much. But I realized while watching this episode that, oh yeah, Hurley is supposed to be 21 when he met, oh my gosh, it just went right out of my head.
Libby?
Yeah, Hurley was supposed to be 21 when he met Libby, a grown woman who had a doctorate degree and a dead husband. She had to have been at least in her mid-30s.
Well, I mean, technically, if you would have graduated high school at 18, let's just even say 17. So you do 4 years of your bachelor's degree. You've got, so that would make you 21. And then, you can actually, between your master's and your PhD, I mean, you could kind of do those almost concurrently. So she could be maybe mid to late 20s.
And look, nothing wrong with Hurley being attracted to a slightly older woman.
Agreed.
I mean,
and husbands
Watros,
die all the time.
Yeah, that's a good point. They do.
Gotta be noted, Cynthia Watros, perfectly fine looking in her 30s.
She is, yeah. Do I need to warn your husband, Cara?
What? Why? No.
No reason.
So when back on the island, Richard's kind of pissed off at Hurley because remember, Hurley's the one who went and talked him back into helping them stop the Man in Black, and now Hurley has just sabotaged his plan to do that. So he's kind of going off on him, and Hurley's like, yeah, well, Jacob told me to do it. He's standing right there, which, yeah, is fair. He can play that card, but unfortunately he's playing it with somebody who actually can call the bluff because Richard goes, what's the island? Jacob told me what the island was a while ago. Ask him what it is. And Hurley tries to kind of straight face through it with, I don't have to answer your questions, but yeah, I think everybody kind of knows. So it's like, it's, good of Hurley to finally try that, just to be like, oh yeah, a dead person just told me to have you do this. But yeah, Richard is a little too savvy for that.
And immediately calls him out on it.
Yeah. It is, I mentioned it earlier, but Jack does back Hurley up immediately, just saying like we should follow his lead, which is, he has a conversation where he talks about it a little bit later, but just to say that, he's reached a place where he doesn't feel like he needs to fix anything, and he's willing to trust in Hurley, and kind of two giant milestones for, compared to the Jack who, we saw wake up in the jungle back in season 1. And Hurley then actually does legitimately see a dead person because he walks off into the jungle and there's Michael again.
And we find out the answer to a question that fans had wanted to know since the beginning. They were trying really hard. Well, no, I can't say they were trying really hard. The thing that fans wanted most out of the final season of this show was answers to all of the questions that had been raised over 5.5 seasons. What's the nature of the smoke monster? What's the nature of the island? What do the numbers mean? What are the whispers in the woods? There were so many. What's the Hurley bird? I'm not going to let that one go. And so they've kind of sprinkled in a few answers here and there, but it was never going to be enough to fully satisfy audiences. But we do get one here, and it's what are the whispers? And it's through Hurley talking to Michael that we find out that the whispers that they have been hearing on the island and that we as audience members have been hearing for 5.5 seasons, those are the voices of people who have died on the island, or at least adjacent to the island, considering Michael was on the freighter when it blew up.
Maybe people that have a connection to the island.
Yeah.
And also, that would kind of count as they're already dead watch, sort of.
Well, I mean, for them, yeah, those voices were dead all along.
What? No. Like, well.
That did get me thinking about if there are like established rules for who Hurley talks to on the island versus off the island. Because I meant to look this up, but didn't get around to it. So off the island, he's talked to Charlie, Mr. Echo, Ana Lucia, and I don't remember if there's anybody else specifically. But on the island,
those are the only ones I remember.
On the island, he's talked to Michael, Jacob, and Anybody else in that range?
And that's, well, Dave, who may or may not have been imaginary.
That's true. So I guess it's that Michael can only appear to him on the island, but he can talk to a lot of other people kind of in either place.
Well, so that's two mysteries now that we have gotten answers to. What were the whispers and what were the numbers? 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42 correspond with the surviving candidates, which I guess that just works retroactively. I think it affects the past. We're not going to focus on it too much. We find out in the Flash Sideways that Libby and Hurley finally get to have their beach picnic together, which is about the sweetest goddamn thing to happen in this entire show. And they get to have their first kiss. And they never actually did get to kiss in season 2, did they? I don't remember.
I don't think so.
I don't think they did. There was a lot of flirting.
Yeah.
And they were
I think
supposed
she gave him like a kiss on the cheek or something at one point. There was sort of like a "you're sweet" moment, but
yeah, well, in the Flash Sideways, they finally get to have that beach picnic and a kiss, and that's what it takes to unlock Hurley's memories, if you want to call it, of the regular timeline. He has the same sort of flashbacks that Desmond and Charlie had and that Faraday described, which puts him now in their camp as well, dudes who had revelations because of beautiful women. And the camera pulls back and we see Desmond sitting in his car watching the two of them. And I put down, I would watch an entire season of Desmond just playing off-island matchmaker.
not to harp too much again on Henry and Cusick being a very charismatic and good-looking guy, but if this dude showed up and like pushed you and like, you know, pointed to a beautiful woman and was like, you know, give her a shot, I'd be like, well, if this guy thinks I can, by golly, I'll try for it.
Yeah.
So back on the island, we didn't really mention it, but Desmond, when he on the island comes out of the electromagnet room, he seems very chill and happy to go along with whatever Widmore wants him to do. But Sayid ambushes the nerd squatters who are escorting him, kills most of them, although he spares Tina Fake for some reason. And then brings Desmond back to meet up with Locke. Locke takes him out into the jungle, and there's a well that's just in the middle of a field. And Terry O'Quinn has done fine work for the last few episodes, but it's been a while since he's gotten to play more than just that kind of sort of menacing folksiness that is Flock's kind of default setting. And he's walking around the well talking about it, and you can see him kind of trying to suss out Desmond. Like, you can tell there's just something off about this guy. And without ever raising his voice or going, like, he finally just circles the well, gets back to Desmond and goes, why aren't you afraid? Like, just, he really cannot figure out why this guy who is out in a jungle and has to know that he's facing somebody very dangerous just seems okay with everything. And somehow I forgot to write down what Desmond's actual response was, but
it was something like along the lines of, what is there to be afraid of?
yeah, and Locke just kind of rolls his eyes and then throws Desmond into the well. So apparently just deciding, you know, he can't outright kill him, maybe, even though Desmond's not a candidate, so he doesn't have that protection that the people on Jacob's wall have. But Locke doesn't seem like, we know he's perfectly willing to kill Jacob's followers, but Desmond seems to occupy his own little place there. But either way, he goes back to camp and is just sort of like, oh, you're not going to be seeing him again. Don't worry about it. Just in time for Hurley and Jack, and I think Sun as well. Yeah,
and Lapidus. It's the whole beach crew.
Yeah, Hurley has led them to go try and actually have a talk with Flock and see if they can work this thing out. Heartbreaking little moment where Sun enters the camp and immediately is looking around for Jin, who is not there because he's still being held by Widmore.
Yeah, got kidnapped in episode 10. It's important to mention that at the beginning of the episode, Kate was questioning why they weren't doing anything, why they were just sitting still in the jungle, and Locke says that it's only a matter of time until the other survivors came to him. And we see that he was right with the end of the episode, or at least the on-island portion of the episode, because the Flash Sideways gets a little crazy right here at the end when we see Desmond in his Mercedes sitting outside of the school that Ben and Locke, Flash Sideways Ben and Locke, teach at. And Desmond is approached by Dr. Ben Linus. And Robert, you gave him the nickname
Ben Linus, Perv Hunter.
because apparently he's been sitting out there in his car outside of a middle school for several hours, which is going to look sus to anybody. But they have a brief conversation, and Desmond lies about, being there to check out the schools in the area because he blah, blah, blah. The important part is that he has been watching John leave school in his wheelchair and push his way across the parking lot.
Tenaciously rolling himself uphill.
Yep.
In, I think, the oldest wheelchair I've ever seen.
Yeah, known to man. And then, so after he finishes talking to Dr. Linus, Desmond puts it in gear, takes off, and runs down Locke in his wheelchair. We get that classic TV, somebody's been run over shot where you see them like go over the windshield and over the back. Now, just prior to this, when the scene started and we saw Desmond watching Locke leave school, Robert's wife Gina and I both joked about how funny it would be if Flash Desmond ran over Flash Locke. And then he actually did it. And then just drives off with that, like, haha, I just did some mischief smile on his face. Probably shouldn't have been as funny as it was, but it was, oh, man.
It's so great because just the editing of the scene just is showing you, like, here's where Desmond is, here's where Locke is. You can tell Desmond is watching Locke. And like you said, it points to, like, is that what Desmond's about to do? But you still can't believe it's about to happen until he really steps on the gas. And so, yeah, we end with Locke lying in what has to be a very unpleasant sense of deja vu. Bloody on the ground as people gather around. And I think, do we just end on his face there? Yeah.
Yeah, Ben runs up to check on him, and he is just out.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, Desmond is in the aggressive school of helping people because he pushes Hurley to hook up with, like, his beautiful long-lost love, and he runs John Locke over with a car. So there is a spectrum of the guidance that he is helping people, or that he's offering to people in the Flash Sideways.
Well, maybe in the Flash Sideways, John's greatest love was his wheelchair. And he's just trying to make sure that they stayed united.
Or could be the hood of Desmond's car.
Well, yeah, we have joked plenty of times, and I think, Cara, it was your husband that pointed this out to us. In old-timey TV shows and cartoons, if you get amnesia from getting hit on the head, all you have to do is get hit on the head a second time to get your memories back. Maybe Flash Sideways Desmond was of the impression that, like, well, if you get paralyzed, maybe the thing to do would be to get paralyzed again, and it'll unparalyze you.
Hey, 2 wrongs make a right, and 2
traumatic, paralyzing incidents
make a non-paralyzed person?
I mean, one horrific crash gave John Locke his ability to walk back.
That is true.
Maybe a second horrific crash would do it in the Flash Sideways. We'll find out in a few episodes.
Hooray.
Yeah, exactly. All right. It was always in May that we seemed to get, well, not seems, it's when we actually did get close to the season finales of Lost across 6 seasons. So way back on May 4th, 2005, we got episode 122, Born to Run, a Kate episode that we all loved dearly. The one that made us go, you know what, maybe we don't need to learn more about Kate. May 10th, 2006, we got episode 221, question mark? May 9th, 2007, we got 320, The Man Behind the Curtain. May 8th, 2008, we got episode 411, Cabin Fever. May 6, 2009, we got 515, Follow the Leader, and then just about 16 years ago, May 11th, 2010, an episode that we'll be watching in just a few nights, episode 615, Across the Sea. Are we going to watch this one? Sorry, I got excited, listeners. No, okay, we're not. We're going to be watching our next batch of episodes on May 9th. I was like, hey, wait a minute. If we watched the episode...
But we could be recording on May 11th, right? Wait.
That's Monday.
Oh, that's Monday. Okay.
Yeah.
I have no idea what day of the week it is.
No, I don't either. Time is an illusion. But anyway, yeah, so that's where we're at. And if the stars align, we'll be watching the season finale 16 years from when it premiered.
Wow.
Yep. So let's talk social media. Are either of you guys on it anymore?
I am, but I'm ashamed of it, so I'm not going to talk about that.
Cool. What are you watching, reading? We during the rain break that we were forced to take, Robert and I were talking about the season finale of Daredevil: Born Again. That's been really fun thing for the two of us for the last 8 weeks. What else? What else you got going on, Robert?
I've been watching Slow Horses on Apple TV, which is from one of the writers of Veep and the showrunner on Justified, which are just two shows that I really enjoyed. So it's a British spy series about the kind of burnouts and rejects from MI5 and the tiny office they've been shuffled off to until they quit from irrelevance, and how they accidentally kind of stumble into actual counter-terrorist and espionage operations. Gary Oldman plays the team leader, and he's just great, but the whole cast is a lot of fun. So it's dramatic, but with a very darkly comic tone to the dialogue. So seasons are only 6 episodes long, so they go very quickly.
Ooh, that's wonderful. That's on my list.
The British way of doing TV. Cara, what about you?
I don't know what the hell I've been doing. What have I been doing?
I think it's just been working.
I think it's working, and
Watching Lost.
yeah, watching Lost.
What are you reading right now?
Actually, I'm struggling to decide what I should read next. Like I kind of want to listen to something new, not new, unrelated to the stuff that I've read from Stephen King. But of course, pretty much everything is related somehow. So I'm struggling to figure out what next Stephen King book to listen to because I just can't make up my mind. So I've kind of been listening to music and podcasts.
Nice. I'm off the Stephen King train for right now. I decided to go back to the beginning with Chuck Palahniuk. I'm rereading Fight Club, and I downloaded his first 6 books because they're all pretty quick reads. So I'm going to reread all those again. I haven't read those in about 20 years, and I remember loving them very much.
Nice.
TV-wise, yes, Daredevil Born Again, loved it very much. Katie and I have also been watching Euphoria, which is just so trashy. So much Schadenfreude.
I understand there are breasts in that show, is kind of what social media has told me about it.
A few. There's some breasts, there's some swinging dicks, there's some balls.
Wait, what? Really? Okay, maybe I'll check it out then.
It's an equal it's an equal opportunity show. They're not equal amounts. There's far more boobs than there are dicks, but they're still in there.
That's always the case.
Right. But anyway, yes, I am still on social media, on Instagram at DB Hensley, and I need to really get back into it, especially if we keep doing this. But the Long Walk Podcast has its own Instagram at Long Walk Podcast. If you want to keep up with Long Walk Productions, you can visit us online at longwalk.us to see more of our original work or hear past episodes that are no longer streaming. You can follow the YouTube links in the show notes. Thank you very much for listening, and if you enjoy this show, please make sure to leave us a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening on.